The private world behind the public monster. Welcome back to the channel, where we uncover the untold, hidden, and often forgotten sides of history's most powerful figures. Today's story takes us behind the brutal reputation of America's most feared gangster and into a world almost no one talks about, Al Capone's family life. Most people know Al Capone as Scarface, the ruthless boss of Chicago's underworld, the man linked to bootlegging, corruption, and bloodshed during Prohibition. Newspapers painted him as a monster, lawmen hunted him as a criminal mastermind, and rivals feared his name. But behind closed doors, away from guns, bribes, and headlines, Capone lived a life that sharply contradicted his public image. This first part explores how Al Capone viewed family, why he guarded them so fiercely, and how his private relationships shaped many of his decisions, even his crimes. A code he never broke: family first. Unlike many gangsters of his era, Al Capone followed one strict rule that he rarely violated. Family was off limits, always. Capone grew up in a poor Italian immigrant family in Brooklyn. His parents, Gabriele and Teresa Capone, were deeply traditional and believed in discipline, loyalty, and respect for family honor. Even after Capone left school early and drifted into street gangs, those values never fully left him. When Capone rose to power in Chicago, he adopted a violent code for enemies, but a completely different one for blood relatives. He never involved his parents, siblings, wife, or child directly in criminal operations. Their names were kept out of records, conversations, and public scandals as much as possible. This wasn't weakness, it was strategy and obsession. Capone believed that a man without family was already dead, and he refused to let his enemies touch what he considered sacred. Marriage to May, a carefully protected union. In 1918, before becoming Chicago's kingpin, Capone married May Coughlin, an Irish-American woman from a respectable family. This marriage itself was unusual in the rigid ethnic lines of organized crime. May was not a gangster's wife in the traditional sense. She avoided public attention, rarely attended flashy events, and never spoke to reporters. Capone insisted she remain distant from his criminal world, not because she didn't know, but because he didn't want her stained by it. He provided May with luxury homes, security, and privacy, but also strict boundaries. She was never to discuss business, never to answer questions, never to be seen as part of his empire. Behind the scenes, Capone reportedly showed May genuine affection. Letters and accounts from associates suggest he trusted her more than almost anyone else, a rare thing for a man who trusted almost no one. His son Sonny, the one thing he truly feared losing. Perhaps the most revealing secret of Al Capone's life was his relationship with his only son, Albert Francis, Sonny, Capone. Capone was fiercely protective of Sonny, obsessively so. He demanded the best education, the best doctors, and constant security. Unlike his own childhood, Sonny's life was meant to be clean, insulated, and far away from crime. Capone openly stated that his son would never follow his path. This fear shaped many of his actions. According to several accounts, Capone avoided retaliatory killings when he believed violence might bring attention or danger near his family. He also attempted to keep Sonny's name out of the press, going so far as to threaten journalists who tried to photograph or mention him. Ironically, the man who ruled through fear lived in constant fear himself, fear that his enemies, or the law, would use his child against him. A double life built on silence. To the outside world, Al Capone was loud, arrogant, and untouchable. Inside his home, he was controlled, cautious, and intensely private. Family dinners were quiet, phones were limited, visitors were screened. Capone understood something many criminals didn't. The greatest vulnerability isn't money or power, it's family. And so he buried their stories, erased their traces, and built a wall of silence around them. But silence never lasts forever. The cost of being a Capone. Welcome back to the channel, where hidden histories are revealed and the untold sides of powerful figures come to light. In part 1, we explored how Al Capone fiercely protected his family and built an invisible wall between them and his criminal empire. In part 2, we uncover the darker truth: protection did not mean safety, and being a Capone came with a lifelong price. This chapter reveals how Capone's arrest, illness, and imprisonment slowly destroyed the shield he built around his loved ones. When the empire fell, the family was exposed. In 1931, Al Capone was convicted, not for murder, not for bootlegging, but for tax evasion. The trial ended his reign, but it also shattered the illusion that his family could remain untouched. Suddenly, the Capone name became a curse. Reporters stalked May Capone. Neighbors whispered. Banks hesitated. Schools asked questions. Although May had committed no crime, she was treated as guilty by association. Capone's enemies couldn't reach him anymore, so society turned his family into the target. The luxury homes became cages. May Capone, trapped between loyalty and survival. While Capone was sent to prison, May became the silent guardian of the family legacy. She faced a brutal choice: defend her husband publicly or disappear completely. May chose silence. She never condemned Al Capone. She never defended him either. Instead, she erased herself. May changed addresses frequently, avoided public events, and rejected all interview requests. This wasn't fear, it was survival. Speaking could reignite attention, and attention meant danger. Behind the scenes, May fought a constant battle with government officials over property, finances, and visitation rights. Much of Capone's wealth was seized or frozen, forcing her to rely on remaining assets that were legally clean. She became, in effect, a widow to a man who was still alive. Sonny Capone and the weight of a famous name. No one suffered more quietly than Sonny Capone. As a child, Sonny was removed from elite schools once administrators realized who his father was. Other children were forbidden to play with him. Teachers treated him differently, not with discipline, but with suspicion. The Capone name followed him everywhere. When Sonny reached adulthood, job opportunities disappeared once employers recognized his surname. Even when he tried to live an honest life, doors closed before he could knock. This was Al Capone's greatest failure, not criminal, but personal. He had wanted his son to live free of the underworld. Instead, the underworld followed Sonny without ever meeting him. Capone's illness, a family secret turned tragedy. While imprisoned, Al Capone's health deteriorated rapidly due to untreated neurosyphilis, a condition he and his family tried desperately to hide. Prison authorities initially believed Capone was pretending to be mentally unfit. But over time, it became clear, the most feared gangster in America was losing his mind. May visited when she could. Sonny saw his father weaken. For a family built around strength and control, this was devastating. Capone's condition forced the family into deeper secrecy. They avoided medical disclosures, refused press access, and hid the truth even from extended relatives. The myth of Scarface was crumbling, and the family watched in silence. Isolation became their new reality. After Capone's release from Alcatraz, the family retreated to Florida, where they lived in near-total isolation. Guards were hired not to protect against enemies, but to keep the world out. Al Capone was no longer a boss. He was a burden. May became a caretaker. Sonny became a witness. The family that Capone once protected now existed only to protect his dignity. After Scarface, how the Capone family disappeared forever. Welcome back. If Part 2 showed the pain of living with Al Capone's downfall, Part 3 reveals something even more shocking. The deliberate disappearance of the Capone family after his death, a vanishing act planned quietly, patiently, and successfully. This is the chapter almost no one talks about. The death of Al Capone was not the end, it was the beginning. Al Capone died on January 25, 1947, at the age of 48. Officially, the cause was cardiac arrest, but in reality, his body and mind had been destroyed years earlier by illness. When the news broke, America expected drama. Instead, they got silence. No grand funeral, no public statements, no speeches from former allies. This was intentional. May Capone made a decision that day. The Capone name would die with Al Capone. May Capone's final mission: erase the name. May Capone outlived her husband by almost 4 decades. During that time, she became something far more powerful than a mob wife. She became a strategist of disappearance. She refused book deals. She rejected Hollywood. She denied historians. Every offer that could bring money or fame was turned down. Why? Because attention was the real danger. May quietly sold properties linked to Capone, moved funds into legal channels, and ensured that nothing tied the family to organized crime anymore. She avoided cities associated with Capone's past and lived under strict privacy. No interviews, no photos, no public appearances. By the 1950s, the Capone family was already fading from public memory. Sonny Capone. A life lived in the shadows. Sonny Capone could have cashed in on his father's legend. Instead, he chose the opposite. He changed his lifestyle, not his name, believing that complete honesty would one day normalize his existence. But the stigma never disappeared. Sonny lived a modest, quiet life in California. He worked ordinary jobs. He avoided crime completely, yet newspapers still referred to him as Al Capone's son, never just Sonny. This constant shadow pushed him further away from the public eye. Eventually, he withdrew entirely, cutting off contact with journalists and historians. Sonny died in 2004. No documentaries, no memoirs, no revelations, just silence. Why the Capone fortune truly vanished. Many believe Al Capone left behind hidden millions. The truth is less exciting, and more tragic. Most of Capone's wealth was seized by the government, lost through legal battles, spent on medical care, dissolved through asset freezes. Whatever remained was carefully converted into legitimate funds, spread thin to avoid attention. May ensured there would be no treasure hunts, no family disputes, no scandals. The Capone fortune didn't disappear overnight, it was slowly suffocated by legality. The greatest escape Capone ever pulled off. Al Capone was famous for escaping the law, until he didn't. But his family succeeded where he failed. They escaped public obsession, criminal legacy, media exploitation, historical curiosity. By choosing silence over storytelling, they denied the world what it wanted most, access. And that made their disappearance permanent. Why this secret still matters today. Every major crime family left records, interviews, documentaries, or descendants chasing fame. The Capones didn't. Their silence rewrote history. Today, Al Capone is a legend. But his family, they are ghosts, by design. And that may be the most powerful move the Capone family ever made. The truth that died with the Capone family. This is the final chapter. And it is the most revealing, the most controlled, and the most deliberately forgotten part of Al Capone's story. Because this is not about crimes, money, or power anymore. This is about how an entire family erased itself on purpose. Al Capone's greatest fear was not the FBI or prison. History often claims that Al Capone feared the FBI, the courts, or prison. That is not true. Capone's real fear was his family's future. He understood something most criminals never do. Power ends, money disappears, but a name can become a life sentence. And Capone was already poisoned. The silent order Capone left behind. Capone never left a written will. No final letter, no recorded confession, but he left one clear instruction to his wife, May Capone. After me, this name must disappear. This was not emotional, it was strategic, and May Capone followed it with absolute discipline. How the Capone family erased itself from history. Unlike other mafia families who sold their stories, gave interviews, wrote books, or allowed documentaries, the Capone family chose total silence. They avoided media exposure, public attention, crime connections, political influence. They did not try to clean the name. They chose to end it. May Capone, the real architect of disappearance. May Capone is often portrayed as a quiet, suffering wife. That image is incomplete. She understood legal systems, financial consequences, media psychology, government attention. She knew that survival did not come from defending Al Capone. It came from outlasting his shadow. She protected the family not with money or power, but with invisibility. Sonny Capone's lifelong burden. Sonny Capone never glorified his father. But he never denied him either. He understood one brutal truth. If he spoke, the Capone name would rise again. If he stayed silent, it would finally die. He chose silence. That decision followed him for his entire life. What really happened to Capone's fortune? There was no legendary buried treasure. Capone's money was absorbed into legal costs, was broken into untraceable fragments, lost value over time, was intentionally dissolved. Large wealth attracts attention, and attention was the one thing the family no longer wanted. Why the FBI never chased the Capone family again? The FBI has thousands of files on Al Capone, but on his family, almost nothing, because they gave the FBI nothing to follow. No crimes, no influence, no public role. They vanished without resistance. That made them untouchable in a different way. The darkest truth about the Capone legacy. The Capone family did not protect their name. They sacrificed it. They understood that the same name that created power would destroy every future generation. So they let it die. Why Al Capone is now only a story. Today, Al Capone is a legend, a crime symbol, a cinematic figure, but his family is not history. It is absence, and absence is sometimes the strongest form of survival. The final reality. Al Capone was not defeated by the FBI. He was not destroyed by prison. He was not broken by power. His true end, and his family's true victory, was disappearing completely. No headlines, no legacy battles, no return, just silence. And that silence did what no law ever could.